what if one day you woke up and you were no longer yourself? What would happen if your child died and came back to life, but wasn't the same? And what if your soul could be replaced? Today we're going to explore some shocking cases of a little-known but absolutely fascinating phenomenon: replacement reincarnation, a concept that differs from the more popular spiritual belief known as walk-ins. Conventional reincarnation is the most widely recognized. When a person dies, their soul is reborn in another body. Typically, the soul enters at conception or during pregnancy. Many cultures around the world believe in this, from Hinduism to some modern spiritual traditions. But in postnatal replacement reincarnation, things get much stranger. A new soul enters a body that has already been born, and the original personality disappears. This often happens after severe illnesses or intense crises. The child or adult begins speaking as if they were someone else, sometimes even giving the name of a recently deceased person and recalling vivid details of that life. In the case of prenatal replacement reincarnation, the new soul enters during gestation. That is, the switch happens before birth, while the baby is still in the womb. And in the case of planned or induced replacement, the new soul enters with a specific purpose, sometimes even with the consent of the original soul. The transition is planned or intentionally induced before or shortly after the original personality's death. And what about the so-called walk-ins? This term became popular thanks to writer Ruth Montgomery. Walk-ins are said to be highly evolved spiritual beings that take over a human body with the permission of the soul who was previously inhabiting it. Unlike in replacement reincarnation, walk-ins do not cause total memory loss. Part of the previous personality remains intact through what is sometimes called cellular memory. Their mission is usually to help humanity during critical times. Montgomery claimed that certain historic figures, like Abraham Lincoln or Gandhi, may have been walk-ins. However, these claims remain speculative and have not been verified by parapsychology or scientific research. Documented cases by type of replacement reincarnation. They say truth is stranger than fiction, and in these cases, that might just be true. Over the years, courageous researchers have delved into stories that sound more like novels than real-life testimonies. Children who recall past lives in chilling detail. People who awaken from illness, saying they are no longer who they were, and souls that seem to cross the boundaries of time to inhabit unfamiliar bodies. Mass delusion? Memory errors? Or are we standing before a truth we're only beginning to glimpse? Let's begin our journey through some of the most intriguing and well-documented cases, classified by the type of reincarnation they appear to represent. Each one a puzzle. Each one an invitation to look beyond the obvious. Postnatal replacement cases. Case 1. Ruprecht Schulz, Germany. Ruprecht Schulz was a German man who, without meaning to, unearthed the tragic story of someone else. Someone who seemed to live inside him. It all started when Ruprecht was just a baby, only 5 weeks old. At that exact moment, a man in another city took his own life. During childhood, Ruprecht displayed unusual behaviors. Sometimes he would point his finger to his temple like a gun and say, "I shoot myself." He also had a strange fascination with ships. He collected models, photos, newspaper clippings. Curious, considering he lived in Berlin, a city far from the sea. As an adult, he became a successful businessman, but was described as extremely cautious and obsessed with security. Then, something changed in his 50s. Each night, when he opened his safe to take out accounting books, he felt an eerie sense of déjà vu, as if he had lived that moment before. Then came the visions. A well-dressed man staring at a ledger with anguish. A disastrous financial decision. A revolver. A shot. This man wasn't fictional. Ruprecht knew it was another life, a life that had once been his. He remembered that the man had been a timber merchant living in a coastal city. Following these clues, he began investigating and found a name: Helmut Kohler. Ruprecht tracked down Kohler's son. What he heard confirmed his memories. Kohler had gone bankrupt due to a bad business decision. Worse yet, he had been betrayed and robbed by his own accountant. In despair, he took his own life. No one had told Ruprecht this story. He remembered it himself. Since childhood, he had carried gestures, fears, hobbies, and precautions that were not his, but belonged to a man who, in death, seemed to find a second chance through his body. The case of Juta, Thailand. Can the soul of an adult return in the body of a baby? This is the strange story of Juta, a Thai boy who began showing unexpected signs from a very early age, all following a family tragedy. When Juta was only 4 months old, his uncle, his mother's older brother, died in a traffic accident. 3 or 4 months later, Juta became seriously ill. A respiratory infection caused high fevers and seizures. His tiny body shook with chills, and his teeth chattered uncontrollably. But the strangest part came after he recovered. His family noticed something odd on his left arm. 2 dark, triangular-shaped marks, just a few millimeters wide. They were identical to marks his uncle had, the beginning of a tattoo he never finished. When Juta learned to speak, he began calling his grandparents Mom and Dad, just as his uncle would have. He used his uncle's nicknames for other relatives, and he behaved like him in tone, gestures, and humor. When his uncle's friends came to visit, Juta would joke with them, just like his uncle used to when alive. At age 2, Juta claimed he worked at a construction company in Bangkok, which had been true for his uncle, but was obviously impossible for such a young child. He saw his uncle's motorcycle and confidently said, "That's mine." These behaviors continued until Juta turned 5. Then, they simply stopped. Even the marks on his arm faded away. Was it all just coincidence? Or did his uncle's soul return, just for a time, through Juta's tiny body? The case of Sudhakar Misra, India. Can a small child remember his own death and the love he left behind? Sudhakar Misra was born in India. By the age of 3, he was already talking about another life, another identity, and a different family, one that wasn't his. Before he turned 1, Sudhakar had become gravely ill. He was so sick that at one point he was believed to have died. But then he came back, and that's when the strange memories began. Just before turning 3, he asked for something unusual: shoes, a specific style not typical for toddlers. When told he couldn't have them, he replied with conviction, Then I'll go to my previous home and get them. He claimed his real name wasn't Sudhakar, but Vimal, that he had a wife and a daughter. He remembered that, in his final moments, his wife had covered him with a sheet while he was dying, and that he kissed her hand to say goodbye. His parents were confused and frightened. His mother, afraid of losing him to another family, a common fear in India, performed a ritual to erase his memories. She spun him counterclockwise on a potter's wheel. But it didn't work. Eventually, his father took him to a clinic run by a cousin. On the way to the town where Vimal, the man Sudhakar claimed to be, had once lived, that cousin had personally known Vimal, and when he heard what the boy said, he contacted the old family. When they met, Sudhakar recognized Vimal's widow, his daughter, and other relatives. His memories matched up. Vimal had died of a heart attack 6 months after Sudhakar was born. Vimal's daughter, moved by the encounter, asked if the child could live with them. But Sudhakar's mother refused. Shortly after, contact between the two families ended. The case of Jasbir Singh, India. What would you do if your child died and then woke up as someone else? This is the astonishing story of Jasbir Singh, a young Indian boy who, after an apparent death, came back to life with the memories of another soul, one who claimed he had been murdered. Jasbir was 3.5 years old when he contracted smallpox. His condition quickly deteriorated, and during the night, he stopped breathing. Devastated, the family postponed the burial until morning. But at dawn, the boy began to move. He was alive. For several days, he couldn't speak. But when he finally regained the ability to talk, he was no longer the same. He didn't recognize his parents, his house, or his village. He insisted that his name wasn't Jasbir, but Sobaram. He said he was the son of Shankar, from a village called Vihedi, and begged to be taken there. He claimed he had died after being given poisoned sweets by a man who owed him money. He said he had fallen off a cart during a wedding procession. But there was something else. He also claimed to be a Brahmin, a high caste in India, and refused to eat food prepared by Jasbir's family, who were of the Jat caste, considered lower. For 2 full years, Jasbir only ate food cooked by a Brahmin neighbor, using metal utensils. This unusual behavior caught attention. Eventually, word reached the real family of Sobaram. A woman from that family came to see the child, and as soon as he saw her, Jasbir recognized her by name. When she returned to Vihedi and told the others, the rest of Sobaram's family came to confirm it. Jasbir recognized all of them. Sobaram's father, daughter, extended relatives. He knew exactly who each one was. The family confirmed every detail Jasbir shared, except for one: the poisoning. On that matter, they said they knew nothing. Over the years, Jasbir kept visiting Vihedi. When Dr. Ian Stevenson interviewed him for the last time at age 21, the young man said something unforgettable. "I still clearly remember the life and the death of Sobaram." The case of Mr. Kha Hieu's daughter, Vietnam. In a small village in southern Vietnam, something happened that left everyone speechless. A case forgotten for years until a local newspaper brought it back to light. This is the story of Hieu and the little girl who claimed to be his deceased daughter. It all began around 1990 in the village of Ten Viet. Hieu's daughter, a 19-year-old young woman, fell ill and died shortly after. At the same time, in a nearby village, another young girl, her exact age wasn't recorded, but she was clearly very young, also became seriously ill. She appeared to die, and her grieving family prepared for the burial. But just before the funeral, the girl woke up, and the first thing she said shocked everyone. "I am Hieu's daughter. Take me to Ten Viet. I need to see him." Her parents, terrified, thought she had lost her mind. But to calm her down, they agreed to take her to the village she insisted on. And when they arrived, something even stranger happened. The little girl led the way by herself to a specific house. She ran to the door, entered without hesitation, and hugged a man she had never seen before. She said with total certainty, "Papa, it's me." The man was Hieu. He was completely confused. He didn't recognize the child. He had no idea what was happening. Until the girl's parents explained what she had said. Meanwhile, the girl walked around the house as if it were her own. She knew every corner. She moved confidently, naturally, as if she had just returned home after a long time. Did the daughter come back from the threshold of death, in the body of another child, just to embrace her father one last time? The case of Iris Farczády, Hungary. Iris Farczády was a Hungarian teenager who at the age of 15 underwent such a radical transformation that many believe another soul took her place. The year was 1933. Iris was a young spiritist medium, accustomed to seances, in which at times her body would be taken over by different presences. But during one of those sessions, something different happened. A spirit didn't leave. It introduced itself as Lucia Altarez de Salvio, a 41-year-old Spanish cleaning woman, mother of several children, who claimed to have died in Madrid 3 months earlier. Lucia spoke only Spanish and didn't understand a word of Hungarian. Gradually, she began learning German, the language spoken in Iris's household. But this wasn't a fleeting possession. Lucia had come to stay. From then on, Iris was no longer the same. She began cooking passionately, something she had never cared for. She sang Spanish songs, danced flamenco, as if those memories and that identity had always lived within her. The taste caught the attention of several researchers over time. Carl Ruffy, Cornelius Tabori, and decades later, Mary Rose Barrington, Peter Mulach, and Titus Rivas. When interviewed in her late 70s, Iris still insisted, "I am Lucia." The strangest part? No official record of Lucia was ever found in Madrid or anywhere in Spain. Some people doubted her story, but Lucia spoke natural, fluent Spanish, sang and danced like an Andalusian woman, and recognized everyday household objects typical of someone from her supposed background. In an interview, the researchers asked her how it felt to have replaced Iris. Lucia broke down in tears. She said she had been floating joyfully in the afterlife after her death, never asking or wanting to be reborn. She didn't know how she ended up in Iris's body, but she was sure of one thing. It wasn't my fault. Was this a case of permanent possession? An unplanned reincarnation? Or simply a fragmented mind searching for a new identity? Perhaps we'll never know. But Iris, or Lucia, lived an entire life not knowing to whom the body she inhabited truly belonged. The case of Sumitra Singh, India. This is the unsettling story of a young Indian woman, just 17 years old, a mother, a wife, and the protagonist of one of the most extraordinary documented cases of replacement reincarnation. It began when Sumitra started entering strange trances. During these moments, she would speak as though possessed by the goddess Santoshi Ma and other divine beings. One day, in trance, she predicted her own death, saying it would happen in 3 days. And on the 3rd day, Sumitra died. But shortly after, her body revived. Except the person who awoke was not Sumitra. The young woman now said her name was Shiva and insisted on being called that. She recognized no one. She refused to care for Sumitra's child. She avoided her husband, saying he was not her spouse. She claimed clearly that she had been murdered by her in-laws, though this was never confirmed, and that her past life had nothing to do with Sumitra's. Word of this new personality reached the father of the real Shiva. He visited the home, and to his surprise, the young woman recognized him instantly. Not just him, but 22 relatives and friends, in person and in photographs. But the changes weren't just emotional. Sumitra had been a poorly educated woman. Shiva, in contrast, spoke differently, more confidently. Her literacy level had drastically improved. She even wrote letters to Shiva's family, which were later analyzed by a handwriting expert, who noted that her penmanship resembled Sumitra's original writing style. Shiva recounted that after her death, she had been taken before Yama, the Hindu god of death. She said that Santoshi Ma hid her under Yama's bench and secretly fed her. Yama, moved by the injustice of her death, gave her 3 more years of life. But after an intervention by Santoshi Ma and the god Hanuman, the time was extended to 7 years. During those years, Sumitra's original self only surfaced once, very briefly. For the rest of the time, she lived as Shiva. The case of the hunter from Henan, China. This case was deeply investigated by Dr. Ian Stevenson and remains one of the most studied by those who dare to look beyond the veil of death. Nearly 300 years ago, in rural Henan, China, something happened that still feels like it belongs in a supernatural tale. This is the story of the young hunter of Henan, a case of replacement reincarnation recorded by Chinese author Pu Songling in his book Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, published in 1740. A noble youth from a wealthy family went hunting hares with hawks, a common pastime among the elite. During the hunt, he fell off his horse and was knocked unconscious. His servants rushed to him. He appeared dead, but slowly, he opened his eyes. What was strange was that, upon waking, he recognized no one. He looked around, confused and disoriented, and then asked, "How did I get here? I'm a Buddhist monk." His servants assumed he was delirious from the fall and took him home. But the young man refused to drink wine, would not eat meat, and avoided his wife. Her presence made him visibly uncomfortable. Soon after, the youth left his home and went to the monastery that he claimed was his real home. Upon arriving, he asked for the monk he believed himself to be. The monks told him that the priest had recently died at 80 years old. They showed him a fresh grave where the monk had been buried. The young man returned home. He tried to live as before, as a regular man, but he couldn't. Something inside him kept pulling him back to the temple. Eventually, he returned to the monastery and told the monks his story. He described intimate details of the old priest's life, things no one else could have known. Shocked, the monks finally accepted him as the soul of their former master, returned in the body of a young noble. And so, in the lands of Henan, a body rose again, with a different consciousness, a different name, and a different mission. The case of Mrs. Li. China. Sometimes the impossible happens, not to the young, but to those who have already lived much of their lives. In 1756, in a village in the old Chinese Empire, an event occurred that the elders would whisper about at night. The story of Mrs. Li, a 30-year-old woman who, by all accounts, returned to life with a different spirit inside her body. Mrs. Li was married and lived a quiet life. One day, she collapsed suddenly. No cause was reported, only that she appeared to be dead. Her husband, distraught, went into town to buy her a coffin.
But when he returned, what he found wasn't a corpse. His wife was alive, but she was not herself. When he approached, she pushed him away. She said he must not touch her. "I'm not your wife," she said. "I'm Miss Wang from another village. I'm unmarried. I don't know how I ended up here." Terrified, the husband sent for the Wang family, and they had shocking news. They had just buried their unmarried daughter. When they arrived at the Li household, the woman ran to embrace them. She spoke with deep familiarity, remembering intimate details of her life as Miss Wang. There was no doubt. Even her fiancé came to see her, and when she saw him, she blushed.
She didn't say a word, but her face said everything. Both families, the Lees and the Wangs, claimed her as their own. The case was taken to a sub-prefect, who, after deliberation, ruled she must be considered Mrs. Li. And so, a woman died, another soul took her place, and life went on, though nothing was ever the same. In the shadows of Chinese history, the story of Mrs. Li lingers like an ancient whisper, an echo of what happens when one life ends, but another refuses to fade. Prenatal replacement, reincarnation. In prenatal replacement, the soul enters during pregnancy, meaning the original soul is replaced before birth, while the baby is still in the womb. Let's begin with one of the most intriguing cases ever documented in India. The case of Toran or Titu Singh, India. Before the age of 2, Titu Singh began speaking about the life and death of a man named Suresh Verma, a radio transistor salesman involved in the regional black market in Agra, India, who had been shot in the head and killed. Titu would repeatedly say he wanted to go to Suresh's shop in Agra. One of his older brothers and a friend went to Agra without Titu and contacted Suresh's widow, who then notified Suresh's biological family. Several members of that family came with her to visit Titu. When they arrived, Titu welcomed them with great enthusiasm. Later, when they took him to Suresh's store and other familiar places, Titu recognized them all, even when they tried to confuse him intentionally. Titu identified deeply with Suresh. His personality was bold, active, temperamental, just like Suresh had been. But as he grew older, something changed. Titu began practicing yoga and eventually became a university professor. His body bore physical signs linked to Suresh's death: a birthmark on his forehead, a bony protrusion near his left ear. These matched the entry and exit points of the fatal bullet. He also had 3 smaller marks on the back of his head, marks that did not match Suresh's injuries. Suresh's death was well documented by police and medical reports. But Titu's exact birth date is less certain, so the time interval between both lives remains unclear. Titu's father believed he was born 3 months after Suresh's death. If that's true, the 3 marks on the back of Titu's head could be related to a previous occupant of the womb, an unborn child who was replaced by Suresh's soul, driven by his desire to return and seek justice for his murder. Interestingly, Titu's mother had a normal pregnancy until the final trimester, when she suddenly became gravely ill and remained sick until giving birth. Planned or induced replacement reincarnation cases. In this rare form of reincarnation, the entry of a new soul into a body is not accidental. It is intentional, often spiritual, and sometimes consented to by the original soul. This type of reincarnation was known in Tibet even before the arrival of Buddhism. Ancient kings and leaders were said to transfer their consciousness into younger bodies to continue ruling. Later, this practice became part of the spiritual traditions of lamas and even the Dalai Lama lineage. Let's explore some of the most striking examples. Thôn-Tsampo, Tibet. In a Tibetan monastery, after the death of the Lama, Thôn-Tsampo, a sacred ceremony was held to identify the ideal body for his new incarnation. An 8-year-old boy was chosen as a possible spiritual successor. During the ritual, the child was placed in front of the embalmed body of the Lama, and both were covered with a veil. The boy let out a loud cry, and when the veil was removed, he declared with confidence, "I am Thôn-Tsampo." From that moment, his behavior changed completely. He went from being timid to speaking with authority, discussing Buddhist teachings, and making prophecies. To verify his identity, the monks placed a mix of objects before him, some that belonged to the Lama, some that didn't. Without hesitation, he selected only the correct ones. The 4th Dalai Lama: can a soul choose its next body and leave clear signs of its return? In 1665, the French physician François Bernier visited Tibet and heard an astonishing account. The 4th Dalai Lama, already old and aware of his approaching death, called his spiritual council and made this announcement: "My soul will reincarnate in a newborn who has just been born." The baby was raised with special care. When he turned 6 or 7, he was given a test. He was shown various objects, some that had belonged to the previous Dalai Lama, and others that had not. The child immediately identified the correct ones. For the Tibetan people, this was unquestionable proof. The soul had returned. This was a living example of soul transmigration, the conscious passage of a spirit from one body to another, without losing its identity or memory. Karma Chagsmed Sprulsku, Tibet. Is it possible to reincarnate before dying? In Tibet, some cases seem to defy all known ideas about consciousness and death. One of the most remarkable is that of the spiritual master Karma Chagsmed Sprulsku. From a young age, he showed exceptional spiritual abilities. He was officially recognized as the 6th reincarnation in a sacred lineage, but the most astonishing part came late in his life. He made a bold, surprising statement. "My next reincarnation has already begun. I have sent my consciousness into a 12-year-old boy." This was not just symbolic. Tibetan spiritual authorities confirmed his claim through meditative search. Soon after, the 7th Karma Chagsmed was formally recognized. Even more impressive, the boy shared the same advanced abilities, as if consciousness, memory, and soul had continued uninterrupted. Khrulzhig Rinpoche, Tibet. Can a soul transfer while the original body is still alive? In the heart of Tibet, there's a profound story about Khrulzhig Rinpoche and a young boy forever changed by a sacred encounter. One day, the elderly Rinpoche visited a humble household. Upon seeing their son, he felt a deep spiritual connection. Without saying a word, the master took the boy into his arms, placed him on a raised seat, laid his amulets and rosary on the boy's lap. Then, sitting down quietly, he observed. Finally, he spoke. "From today, this boy is Khrulzhig Rinpoche. My mind has passed into him. Anyone seeking rituals, teachings, or guidance must now come to him, not to me." His original body remained alive for 2 more years, but his consciousness, identity, and spiritual presence had already moved on. This case raises a powerful question. Can a soul migrate into a new body before the former one has even died? What if who we are isn't fixed? These stories suggest that consciousness may outlive the body, that identity can shift, return, or even be replaced. Maybe we are more than one lifetime. Maybe some souls come back to finish what was left undone. If any of this stirred something in you, a memory, a question, a feeling you can't explain, then stay with us, because this journey has only just begun. Thank you for watching and for daring to wonder what it truly means to be alive.